Dangerous Hurricane Rafael is nearing western Cuba. Good Wednesday afternoon. I'm Mike Nasa with continuing video update coverage of a Category 3 late-season hurricane in the Western Caribbean. There is the true color visible satellite imagery of our hurricane, a very tightly coiled eye there, not extremely well organized, but organized enough to be a Category 3 major hurricane, the fifth of this long hurricane season following major hurricanes Beryl, Helene, Kirk, and Milton. Now, we have a 2 p.m. update from the National Hurricane Center, and as of 2 p.m., Hurricane Rafael was at 22.2 north, 82.4 west. That puts the eye of the hurricane about 50 miles northeast of the Isle of Youth, or 70 miles south of Havana. Winds still 115 miles per hour, so it's at the bottom edge of Category 3. That makes it a major hurricane. Moving northwest at 14 miles per hour, and that pressure about 956 millibars. Again, the forecast track from 1 p.m. Eastern Time does show, this is from 11 a.m. Eastern Time actually, but it was updated at 1 o'clock with the current position. It shows the hurricane crossing western Cuba later this afternoon and evening, and then emerging in the Gulf of Mexico and kind of milling around out here throughout the weekend as a weakening hurricane and then weakening all the way down to a very weak tropical storm. This looks like it could be one of the rare hurricanes to enter the Gulf of Mexico landlocked, but never hit land. It's only happened 4 times in the 20th century. It's very rare. This century, I'm not sure the last time it's happened, if it has, in the last 24 years. But when a storm gets in the Gulf, usually they hit land. But if the conditions are so unfavorable, Rafael may die out. Either way, there is still a chance we could see some kind of impact from as much as a tropical storm along the Gulf Coast of the United States or even the coastline of Mexico. Here's the visible satellite imagery, and again, the eye is not very well organized. It looked a little better when the sun came up. Notice it kind of degraded there as the system struggles to make landfall. There is kind of dancing around the Isle of Youth and these little keys off the southern coastline of Cuba, but it does appear that it will make landfall very shortly. Here's the long-range radar out of Key West. And Key West, you are under a tropical storm warning. You're going to have some rain bands moving through here. I'll show you that closer in a minute, but there's the eye of the hurricane. It looks like it underwent an eye wall replacement cycle of some kind, or dry air got into the eye, because if you notice, this here is the inner core of the storm. In fact, let me see. I can zoom in on this, right? Yeah. So if I zoom in more to give you some idea, this is the inner eye wall, what I just circled. This little half crescent type shaped thing going on, that is either dry air entrainment or kind of a moat from an eye wall replacement cycle. So the good news is it appears that it's stopped strengthening. So it should either be at the intensity it is now or even lower. But again, 115 miles per hour, mostly in this area here of the northern eye wall, making landfall in Cuba. One of the reasons it strengthened so much was it had this very favorable anticyclone right over the top of it in the high pressure area there. So high pressure aloft flowing clockwise over the low pressure counterclockwise ventilates the hurricane. Now what's happening now is the system is to the north of the center of that anticyclone, and it's getting sheared by it, it's getting displaced a little, which probably explains that weakening like we saw on satellite there. If I look again, notice is probably getting a little bit of undercutting from that wind shear there around the northern side of that anticyclone in the Western Caribbean. So, what does all that jargon mean? It means it's about to move into this very high wind shear. And remember, it is November, so the Gulf of Mexico is much cooler. So all of this should lead to a slow demise for Rafael as it moves into the Gulf of Mexico. Nevertheless, rainfall is still an impact, especially here where we mentioned it's making landfall in western Cuba. 5, 10, 15 inches of rainfall, that could cause a lot of flooding concerns down there. And then for the Florida Keys, you guys could have water rises of 1 to 2 feet, 1 to 3 in the dry Tortugas from that onshore flow around the hurricane, the north side. Again, looking at the radar right now out of Key West, some good rain bands moving in. So it is a dreary day there in the Florida Keys as far as rain is concerned, with the hurricane, the heaviest rain here off to the south where the rain shield is over Cuba. Now, these are the European ensembles. Most of them take the system into the Gulf and kind of mill it around. But note what happens here in the Caribbean in the longer range. This is somewhere around the 16th. Another storm on the European coming in the Western Caribbean, another hurricane. The GFS model, same thing. It takes our system into the Gulf Coast as a very weak tropical storm. But notice what happens here. We get another system developing in the Western Caribbean sometime in mid areas of November. So the hurricane season ain't over yet. It could be, but we could still see another system, maybe even another powerful system in the Caribbean this time late season. That's where you look. As far as the tropical storm conditions, the likelihood of that on the Gulf Coast, very small. Areas here from Brownsville all the way to Mobile, you guys are in a very, very low 5 to 10% probability that you will have an impact. Again, it should slow down and really get beaten in the Gulf. So Rafael, a serious major hurricane impact on western Cuba today, but after that, it should weaken and dissipate. Nevertheless, if you are watching in the Florida Keys, get ready for some water rises, gusty winds, and rain as the system moves to the south. Hurricane Rafael, a dangerous Category 3 strike on western Cuba in November as the very significant hurricane season of 2024 rages on.